Hi, I'm JP Conway. I'm a director, writer, and editor.
Yeah, so I decided to go into film mainly because after I finished school, I decided not to go to university. I had a bit of stuff going on in my life. I didn't really know what I wanted to study. I had a place to study biology, but I decided that wasn't for me. So went to America for a bit, hung out there. And when I came back to England, I started dabbling in many different areas of work. Eventually, finding jobs in the film industry as an actor, and realised I enjoyed behind the camera stuff. Was interested in how the camera worked, so got my own equipment, started making my own things, and now I've ended up in the industry. Yeah, so my projects, people who've seen them usually say they're very true to me. They're very, some of them are quite bizarre. Like I'm a big fan of David Lynch and those kind of strange horror things. So a few of my movies dabble in that. That's surrealism. But then my biggest project, a film called The Pink Butterfly, that is more heavily inspired by personal events in my life. So the film's dedicated to my little sister who passed away, Maria, in 2015. So the film's very much about that element of my life, which I think comes across in the film. People who don't know the story or watch the film, they said you can tell very obviously it's inspired by real life events. Even though the film itself is quite fantastical, it's about a butterfly and a girl going on magical adventures, but it's a metaphor, for what really happened, and that's my biggest influence probably. Probably the Pink Butterfly. The Pink Butterfly is, my first proper professional thing that I've directed and wrote. So to make that film, I had to, I funded it entirely myself. I didn't get funding from anyone else. It ended up costing about $5,000 in total. When you include the animator, the voice actor, the music, and also the festival run. So I've covered all that cost, and much bigger than my zero budget things. Obviously, still very low budget compared to bigger projects, but for someone on their own, starting out, it's quite a high amount, I think. And so that was like me putting all my resources, all my passion, all my time during lockdown, because we didn't know lockdown was coming when we started. It just so happened that the outbreak happened as well, so we ended up having more free time to really just dedicate to the film. Had an animator in Italy, and she was just really working on it day and night because she had nothing else to do. So she got really into the film, and I think it shows that everyone should put their whole into it.
The Pink Butterfly, when I watched the film, I obviously thought it was good because it's my film. I'd be very disappointed if I didn't, but I didn't know how anyone else would react. The first people to watch it were my family. They didn't know anything about it. I hadn't told anyone I was making the film. And so they watched it, and I remember as soon as it started, my dad realised what it was going to be about, and I saw him cry, and I'd never seen my dad really cry, so that was a strange moment, and I thought, ooh. And then they all said how amazing they thought the film was. My mum loves it, my sisters all like it, and then I started showing the film to more and more people, just trying to get I showed it to some colleagues of mine, some friends of mine, and then some strangers who I'd never met, because I wanted to get an honest opinion, and I think strangers are probably the people who will give you if they didn't like it, they'll say they didn't like it. But no one has said that. It has always got a very positive response from everyone who's seen it. Even when I let people review it anonymously, they still have positive feedback. So the film, I didn't expect how well received it would be. I was hoping people would like it, but people seem to love it, and that's just good. And the festivals as well. I think it's on its 8th award now, I think. So it's got a nice ball going of just going from award to award, which is very nice, and it makes me feel good, I wasn't anticipating that. I was hoping for it, but didn't expect it. So nice surprise. So what I was doing before film is probably what I was stating. I really enjoyed it. I worked with children with special needs, something that is very close to me. I have autism. Obviously, I'm much more higher functioning than the children I was working with, but it was something that I very much enjoyed. I did it for a few years, and I had a great time doing it. I love working with the kids. I like helping people with similar issues to me develop, and I even, the Pink Butterfly, going back on that, I sent that to a school that I had worked at, and they showed some of the kids and said, JP, when he worked here, remember him, he has autism, and he made this, and it's very good, you guys can, so they use that as a way to inspire the children, the fact that I have a similar condition to them. So I'd probably be doing that because I do really enjoy that, and I do miss that, and a bit of me sometimes does want to go back to that, just because I do find enjoyment in it. But I think some of my future projects, I really want to explore like, those kind of like issues, like people with learning disabilities and stuff. I want to find a way to tell a story about people like that. Yeah, so I mean, with the success of the Pink Butterfly, I just want to move on to my next project now, try and get a little bit of a bigger budget. Got a few scripts that I've written and some interest from people who want to maybe help fund it. The next film that I really am interested in doing is a strange mystery thriller thing set at a circus, which I recently wrote the script for and got first feedback on it. And people quite like it. It's one of those movies that has a twist at the end, and people are like, "Oh, great twist!" and so I'm excited to explore that. But really, it's just keep writing, keep directing. People who inspire me are like Kevin Smith, David Lynch, people who are like independent director writers who write their own projects, do their own projects, and they kind of make it for them and no one else. And that's basically what I want to do in my life, is just make films that I want to watch. And if other people like them, then that's great. Yeah. Yes, yeah, and I think, pursuing a career in film is something that I think people have in their head is like impossible. It's too hard to get into the industry, it's too exclusive. That's not true. The industry is actually fairly easy to get into. Like there's opportunities everywhere if you're just willing to put the work in. And there's no like right way into the industry. It's not, you have to go to film school. You can just work as a runner, like apply and apply and apply. Someone will need you, especially if you can drive. If you can drive, then people will definitely be like, yeah, good, because they need people who can drive. It's easy enough to get into. Just apply everywhere, and you work your way up. Like any job, you work your way up the ladder, get to where you want to be. I think it's just such a fun industry to be involved in, because you're telling stories, you're making worlds up, and it's just enjoyable. And also, the industry is always growing. Like unlike a lot of industries, the film industry just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. There's more and more jobs, especially as the technology gets more and more complex. There's more specialised roles that just didn't exist a few years ago. And people think as well with COVID and the film industry shut down basically for a year, that the industry doesn't have as many jobs. That's also not true. There's now more jobs than ever. Like there's so much work. It's everywhere because they haven't been working for a year. People want to make stuff. People have been waiting. So there's like a year of back catalogue. So now is a great time to get into the industry. I think people should be trying to do it. Like if you want to work in the industry, go work in the industry because they want you. So what makes my legacy 1 in 1 million? I think the fact that, like I mentioned before, I feel though I have a unique perspective and voice due to my autism. I think, autistic people, from my knowledge, don't really get to tell stories as often as other people. And for me especially, I don't see the world in the same way that my friends and family seem to. When they talk about things, I realise, I don't get why they're feeling the way they're feeling, why they say the things they say. When I make my stories, I make my characters, obviously they're inspired by the way I see the world. And people have mentioned to me that it's like a fresh perspective. They're the things they haven't thought about, things they have never ever even considered, come up, because that's how I see the world differently to them. And obviously everyone has their own unique perspective, but I think my voice happens to come from a pretty underrepresented background, like people with learning difficulties and special needs. And yet I am able to tell these stories, not on their behalf, but as a member of that community. And so I think my legacy and what makes me different is the fact that I am telling stories from a point of view that just lacks the kind of emotional understanding that society tends to take as granted. Things that people seem to think everyone understands, I don't really quite get them. So my movies are a bit odd, they're a bit different, but that's what makes them me, because I have a little bit of oddness, a little bit differentness, but so I want that to be on screen. I want people to experience that and to see things from my perspective in a way that I feel that I can't see from theirs. So it's I think from hearing people's reaction to my films, it helps me understand them and helps them understand me. So it's just the way that I want my art to be.
The Pink Butterfly will be on Vimeo in 1 year after it's finished its festival run. You can also find me on Instagram at j.p.conway, and if you're interested in any showreel scenes, monologues or duologues, you can hit me up and I'll try and film them for you. Also, look out for the film Another Day, which will be on Amazon Prime and was made by Manster Productions.